The Roman army conquered the world through discipline. But when that discipline broke, Rome unleashed a punishment so unsettling that even hardened generals feared using it. Soldiers were forced to stand shoulder to shoulder as fate was chosen randomly among them, not as justice but as a message. Because Rome believed fear could rebuild unity faster than reward ever could, and in that moment every man learned a terrifying truth. Sometimes survival had nothing to do with courage, only with luck, and that realization changed the way they marched, fought, and lived forever. The morning begins quietly, without horns, without speeches, without the sound of celebration that usually follows soldiers gathering in formation. Only silence stretching across rows of men standing beneath a pale sky that feels heavier than usual, as if even the air understands what is about to happen, and none of them know who will be chosen, because that uncertainty is the purpose, the hidden mechanism behind a punishment designed not merely to correct behavior, but to reshape the minds of those who witness it. Because Rome was never only a city or an army, but a system. A vast machine built on discipline and hierarchy, where every individual existed as a moving part inside something far larger than themselves. And within that machine, failure could not be allowed to spread like doubt among soldiers who were expected to move as one body, breathe as one body, and endure as one body. And when unity broke down, Rome needed a solution that would restore order without completely destroying the unit. Something powerful enough to remind every soldier that loyalty was not optional and that the cost of disorder would be felt collectively. And so the ritual known as decimation emerged as both warning and symbol. A practice whispered about long before it was ever witnessed, spoken of in low voices during long marches or quiet nights when stories carried more weight than commands. And when the order for decimation was given, it changed the atmosphere immediately, because even the strongest soldiers felt the ground shift beneath them, understanding that what followed would not be decided by bravery or skill, but by chance itself. And that randomness made the ritual terrifying, because it removed the illusion of control. The men were divided into groups of 10, and lots were drawn without ceremony, without emotion, as if fate itself had been invited to stand among them. And each soldier waited, not knowing whether luck would pass over them or settle upon their shoulders. And the silence between breaths became unbearable, because the punishment was never only about the one selected, but about the psychological transformation of everyone present. Rome understood that fear shared collectively could forge discipline more effectively than punishment aimed at individuals alone. And so decimation existed as a tool designed to reshape behavior through uncertainty, forcing soldiers to hold each other accountable, because the consequences of failure would ripple outward beyond any single person. And this created a culture where loyalty to the group became survival itself, where hesitation in battle carried a shadow far greater than personal risk, because the outcome could affect everyone standing beside you. And historians would later debate whether this method strengthened unity or quietly fractured it beneath the surface. Because while some units emerged more disciplined and focused, others carried a lingering tension that never fully disappeared, a silent awareness that their fate could be determined by forces beyond their control. And commanders understood that decimation was not something to be used lightly. Its power came from rarity, from the fact that most soldiers would only ever hear stories rather than witness it directly. And that rarity transformed the ritual into legend, into a myth that traveled faster than orders across the vast territories of Rome, shaping behavior long before any punishment occurred, because anticipation can be more powerful than reality. And Rome mastered the art of psychological influence by allowing fear to exist as a constant background presence rather than a frequent spectacle. And this reveals something deeper about Roman philosophy, because the empire believed stability required structure, and structure required discipline, and discipline required consequences that could not be ignored. Yet beneath this logic lies an uncomfortable question about whether fear alone can sustain loyalty, or whether it simply masks deeper fractures waiting to surface. And the aftermath of decimation often revealed subtle shifts among soldiers, quieter conversations, sharper focus during drills, an unspoken agreement to avoid anything that might draw negative attention. And though they continued marching and fighting as before, the memory lingered like a shadow just outside direct sight, reminding them that Rome valued order above individual identity, that the strength of the collective always outweighed personal fate. And over time, the practice faded, becoming more myth than routine. But its legacy endured because the idea of collective responsibility echoed throughout history in various forms, appearing whenever leaders sought to enforce unity through shared consequences rather than individual judgment. And even centuries later, the concept remains unsettling because it forces us to confront the delicate balance between discipline and fear, between leadership and control. And perhaps that is why decimation continues to capture imagination today. Not because of spectacle, but because of what it reveals about human systems and the lengths societies will go to preserve stability when faced with uncertainty. And as the soldiers eventually disperse and formations dissolve, the ritual ends quietly, without celebration or ceremony, leaving behind only memory and the silent understanding that the most powerful weapon Rome possessed was not always the sword or shield, but the invisible pressure that shaped behavior long before any battle began. A reminder that sometimes history's darkest stories are not defined by noise or chaos, but by silence, by anticipation, and by the unsettling realization that order can be maintained not only through strength, but through the careful cultivation of fear that follows people long after the moment itself has passed.